Well, it's that time again to update you guys on my 3 largest stocks that I'm investing in the month of September 2018. Let's get started. What's up everybody, my name is Ale. Welcome to my world of stocks. Now, as you guys know, basically since the beginning of my YouTube channel, my 3 largest stocks have always been Nintendo, AMD, and Disney. But after AMD went up by so much recently, and if you've been watching my recent videos, then you know that after more than doubling my money on AMD, I have been cashing in some of those profits. I still have some AMD that I'm holding for the long term, but I did cash in some of those profits. So AMD fell down to, right now I think they're like my 5th or 6th largest stock. I'm not sure if Activision Blizzard actually passed them yet. I think it might have. So AMD might be like my 6th largest stock now. But so my 3 largest stocks have now, for the first time ever, changed on the channel. So we're still at Nintendo being number 1. Number 2 is still Disney, and number 3 is now Microsoft. But I don't want you guys to worry. I will continue to cover AMD on this channel, not only because I'm holding it myself, but also because I know that a lot of you are invested in AMD, and I don't want to do you guys a disservice. I will continue to talk about AMD and keep you guys updated on that stock, since I know that you guys would appreciate those type of videos. But before we get started, can I please ask you to do me a favor and leave a comment down below? Let me know which one of these 3 stocks you like the most when looking at Nintendo, Disney, or Microsoft. If you had to choose one of those, which one would you choose? And go ahead and vote for, that's for Ali's World Consensus. I'll tally up the votes and I'll have the results for you guys in next month's video. Now, last month we had Nintendo, Disney, and AMD, and 17 subscribers voted. And out of those 17 amateur analysts, 47% voted for Disney at number 1, 35% voted for AMD at number 2. By the way, those people made a lot of money recently, and then if they were invested in AMD, and then 18% voted for Nintendo at number 3. So still pretty good kind of all around. It looks like a lot of people kind of liked all 3, but I think most people were choosing Disney, probably because of the upcoming streaming service. A lot of people are really expecting Disney to overthrow Netflix, so that's probably a reason why so many people have been bullish on Disney recently. Alright, but with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with my number 1 biggest stock, Nintendo, ticker symbol NTDOY, which by the way is now available on Robinhood, which I think is really cool. It used to not be available on Robinhood, so that's kind of cool. Anyway, when looking at their recent performance in the last 3 months, in June we had horrible performance, and that's because of E3, which is like the biggest gaming event in the world every single year, and they dropped by around 20%, which is actually when I decided to buy even more Nintendo stock. I actually bought some before that, so that kind of sucked for me because they dropped a lot. But then when they did drop, I actually did pick up some on the dip as well. And then in July, they started recovering up around 5%. And then this past month here, August, they recovered another 2%, and they're currently trading at the time of this recording at around $43 per share. Now, as you guys know, I am invested in Nintendo because of mostly this guy right here. So this is the Nintendo Switch. It's their newest gaming console. It's a hybrid console that you can play portably or set it down into the dock and project on your big screen TV. Now, the reason why I started investing in Nintendo because of that guy is because there's never really been such a powerful kind of hybrid console. We've had the PS Vita for PlayStation, but that's a little different. It's not really the same thing. This one is pretty much their dedicated gaming console that you can also play on the big screen TV. Now, the fact that it's portable is a big deal because it's really the only way that they've been able to bring Pokemon to the home gaming console, to the big screen TV, because Pokemon, the makers of Pokemon, Game Freak, they've always said that they would only bring Pokemon to the home gaming console if it was also portable. It had to be a portable device. Now that their home gaming console is both portable and stationary at home, Pokemon is coming over. And Pokemon is a big deal because it's the highest grossing franchise in history, even ahead of Star Wars, which I think is a huge deal. It's pretty amazing. And they're also the 2nd best-selling game franchise of all time, only behind Mario, which by the way is owned by Nintendo. Now, as of right now, Nintendo is a really weird stock because it is a stock that I just have so many conflicting feelings about. On one hand, I think it's amazing that the Nintendo Switch is this portable console, this hybrid console that you can play in so many different ways. But on the other hand, it's such an underpowered machine compared to the Xbox and the PlayStation. I mean, we rarely get 1080p 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch on the big screen TV, and that's usually with first-party games that are actually made by Nintendo. But then when you take the games portably, I mean, sometimes you get as low as like 480p, which is not that great. And the Nintendo Switch screen itself is capped at 720p portably. I know that that's not a huge deal because the screen is so much smaller that you don't really notice the difference, but sometimes it drops well below that, and to me it is definitely noticeable, and a lot of times you get stuck with like 30 frames per second, and I'm just at a point now where I hate games that are at 30 frames per second. I really love 60 FPS. I know we don't always get it, even with Xbox and PlayStation, don't get me wrong, we don't get that with those either, and sometimes Xbox struggles to hit 1080p on its own either. But with Xbox, now they have the Xbox One X that does 4K gaming, sometimes even does 4K 60 FPS. PlayStation has a PS4 Pro, and that's not really the concern. If it stopped there, I think we'd be fine. But the problem is that we're quickly approaching the next gen of gaming consoles, home gaming consoles. So Microsoft is going to come out with their next gen, PlayStation is going to come out with their next gen. It could be as early as next year, but most people are predicting 2020. So that does give us a little bit of a buffer. So again, that's why I'm saying I feel weird about Nintendo, because I like to invest in stocks long term, but with Nintendo it's kind of difficult. I kind of see it more as a medium term stock, because I could definitely see it dipping once other gaming consoles come out. Not to mention the fact that there's a very real possibility that Sony and Microsoft release their own kind of hybrid consoles. I mean, what's to stop Microsoft from releasing some kind of portable Xbox console as well? They do very well with the Surface line. Shoot, I'm even using a Surface myself. So and actually the people that design the Xbox hardware are actually from the Surface team. So the point that I'm kind of trying to get at, I know I'm all over the place, but the point that I'm trying to get at is that Microsoft, they're really good at designing hardware. So there's no limitations to them designing some kind of hybrid console. And then Sony, they used to have the PSP. So all I'm saying is that there's going to be some serious competition that I think Nintendo has to worry about. Now, there are rumors that there will be a Switch revision, a Nintendo Switch revision that may have some kind of 4K support, or at least just higher specs, better specs to push out better graphics and better performance. But there are also a lot of people discrediting those rumors. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And you also run the risk of alienating the fans that picked up the Nintendo Switch very early on. Now, if we just kind of ignore all of that stuff and we look at Nintendo just kind of in the short term, I think the biggest concern with Nintendo right now in the short term is that Nintendo projected to have 20 million Switch units sales. 20 million Switch sales. That just doesn't sound right. Okay, 20 million. Nintendo projected that they will sell 20 million Switch hardware units this fiscal year. Now, if you're not familiar with Nintendo, their fiscal year runs from April to March. And so the first quarter was April, May, June, and they only sold around 2 million Switch hardware units. So that's not really that great, because that leaves another 18 million units to be sold in that fiscal year in order to hit that target. And when it comes to like video game stocks, it's really important to hit these type of targets. I think analysts and investors are going to really be paying attention to whether or not they sell these many units. So the fact that they have 3 quarters left to sell 18 million units is not going to be easy. Now, we're currently in the second quarter, so that's July, August, and September. And I'm also expecting pretty mediocre sales this quarter as well, because there haven't been any big system seller or heavy hitter games out. We did have some success with Mario Tennis and also Octopath Traveler, but there haven't been any real big system seller games. Those will be coming later, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But the only big thing that I see happening in this quarter is that in September, the last month of that quarter, we should be getting the online subscription service. We have no idea what that's going to really look like. I'm having high hopes for it, because when Nintendo was asked by investors how they plan on marketing it and getting people to sign up for it, they basically said that once they announce it, people would just sign up and you got to trust them. So I'm expecting them to have some surprises. We currently know that they are going to be offering free NES games, so like Nintendo original games, but we don't know about them offering SNES or Nintendo 64 or anything like that. But if they offer some of those backlogged games as a type of virtual console, that could definitely push some Nintendo Switch hardware sales. If you can play all of Nintendo's old games, on a portable gaming console like this, that could be huge. And I think that alone would convince a lot of people to pick up the system. But the other thing that we could also see in September is that there are some heavy rumors that we will be getting a Nintendo Direct in September as well. Now, if you don't know what a Nintendo Direct is, that's where Nintendo does an announcement and they talk about games coming to the platform. So if they have some surprises, which a lot of people, there's a lot of rumors right now, pretty credible rumors, that they will be having a new Super Mario, Super Luigi game, which I think will sell very well. There's also rumors for a Metroid Prime trilogy, which a lot of people are asking for, and I know a lot of people would buy that as well. And then there are also some rumors about like Grand Theft Auto and some other games coming to the platform also. And on top of that, we are starting to see some third-party support. We had Diablo 3 announced, Warframe announced, and then we also got Fortnite back at E3, which was downloaded over 2 million times just on the first day. And then when looking at software sales in the last quarter, software sales were up 120% year over year. So what that tells me is that people are definitely hungry for games. So if they come out with a Nintendo Direct with some big games announced, that could potentially be huge as well. But I think the real push, the real help is going to come from the third and fourth quarter. Those 2 quarters alone may actually be able to get us the 20 million Switch hardware sales that we need. Because in the third quarter, so this would be October, November, December, we're going to be getting in October Mario Party, in November Pokemon, which is huge, and then in December Smash Brothers Ultimate. And while Smash Brothers Ultimate is on just the last month, it's like at the very end of the quarter, all of those sales from the third quarter can carry over to the fourth quarter. And even just looking at Smash Brothers Ultimate, they recently announced a new bundle where they have the game in a steelbook case and a Pro controller combined with it, and that's selling for $140. And even when I tried to pre-order it myself, it was always sold out. So it looks like that's selling very well. And then you look at Amazon, and Smash Brothers on Amazon is the #1 selling game for 2018, and it's only in pre-order. It's not even a fully released game yet. So just by pre-orders, it's already the #1 selling game. So for those reasons, I think that we will actually hit this 20 million target. A lot of people have been asking me about it. A lot of people are worried about it. I think we will hit it. If we don't, Nintendo stock could get hammered. And when looking at this second quarter, if Switch sales are mediocre again, say we get less than 2 million Switch unit sales or something like that, then that could also hurt this stock, because I think a lot of analysts and investors are going to predict that we will not hit 20 million. But in my opinion, I think Pokemon and Smash Brothers alone could push, and they're launching in the holiday season. I think that could push Switch unit sales just in the third and fourth quarter to get us over the hump. Anyway, I know that I just went all over the place with Nintendo, but we have to move on because the video is going to be too long. So we'll talk more about Nintendo soon. Every single month I'll give an update. I have so many conflicting feelings about Nintendo. You could probably make the argument that Nintendo should not be my largest stock, given the fact that I have so many conflicting feelings on it. And I would agree with you. I just think that there's so much potential, especially with Pokemon and in the medium term. But anyway, we'll talk more about Nintendo next time. Okay, next up is my second largest stock. This one, I promise, is much more stable. I can invest in Disney for as long as I want, and also Microsoft. I mean, those are 2 stocks. Again, Nintendo, a little bit more of a speculation play, but Disney and Microsoft, 2 stocks that I can hold for the rest of my life. I truly believe that. But Disney, ticker symbol DIS, and when looking at their recent performance, in June, they went up by 5%. In July, they went up another 8%. And now in August, they went down by about 1%. And currently, at the time of this recording, they trade for around $112 per share. Now, you guys know why I'm so bullish on Disney. And the reason why is because they just have such a strong brand with so many IPs. And when looking at the recent acquisition of Fox, they added, X-Men and Deadpool. They already had Star Wars, Marvel. They have a bunch of family content with Pixar, and just the list goes on. And that's not to mention the fact that they have theme parks and resorts all over the world. Disneyland is probably the most valuable theme park in history. And another really crazy thing about Disney is that if some of their brands or IPs go kind of stale or are not selling that well, they can always just reboot them. I mean, they can redo the entire X-Men franchise. They can add so many storylines to Star Wars. They can do so many different things. But the biggest reason why people are so bullish on Disney right now is because of their upcoming launch of their streaming service next year in 2019. Now, I do want to talk about Netflix for a little bit, because so many people compare Disney to Netflix right now because they're going to be competing. But when looking at Netflix, I was reading one report that said that 80% of Netflix viewers in the US watch licensed content, and only 20% watch original content on Netflix. And I think that that's a pretty big deal, because that means that the majority of people are watching licensed content that is not even owned by Netflix, whereas Disney has a ton of content that they completely own, and Disney will also be removing their content from Netflix next year. So we know that in the beginning of 2019 they will start removing their movies from Netflix. I think some of the shows will stay on there, like some of the Marvel shows like Daredevil, Punisher, Luke Cage, some of those different shows. But even when looking at those Marvel shows, those are some of the most viewed shows on Netflix, and I think that that just makes Disney look even stronger to me, because those are technically owned by Disney. I mean, they have contractual obligations to still show them on Netflix, but I think at some point Disney will get out of that too. And also you got to factor in that Disney will probably have much bigger budgets and be able to produce stuff at a much bigger scale. I mean, Disney does enormous movies, you know, like enormous Star Wars and Marvel movies and things like that, whereas Netflix doesn't really do anything like that. I mean, they do produce some of their own original content, but not anywhere near the same scale as Disney. And when looking at Star Wars, we know that Disney is going to have a budget for, they're going to be making an upcoming show of Star Wars for their streaming platform, and they're going to have a budget of around $10 million per episode. And that Star Wars show for the first season is going to run for 10 episodes, which pretty much means a budget of $100 million just for that first season of that one show. I mean, that's an enormous budget. When you look at, that's actually just as big of a budget as Game of Thrones. I think Game of Thrones had a few episodes where it was like $10 million per episode. And then Netflix, I think the most that they ever spent was they got close to around $8 million on one episode of Stranger Things. And I think that that was I think that was where they maxed out. So Disney's budget and scale is just so much bigger. And even with that Star Wars show that we're talking about, they're actually bringing the director of Iron Man to do that show, and they are also bringing other people from Marvel movies and Marvel Studios. So I think if you're bringing over some of your creative talent from your Marvel studio, from some of your big budget pictures, and you're using them on your streaming platform, I mean, Disney is just gonna eclipse anything that Netflix can offer. And what's even crazier is looking at their valuations. I mean, for the longest time, Netflix had a bigger market cap, but now that Disney stock kind of started recovering, their market cap is a little bit bigger now. I think currently Disney's market cap is at around 167 billion, but Netflix is right there at 160 billion. So they're really, really close. And then when looking at their PE ratios, Netflix has a trailing PE ratio of 167, while Disney's is less than 15. And even looking at forward ratios, Netflix has a forward PE that is still at around 85, while Disney is just over 15. That's mind-blowing to me. And then even factoring future growth, when looking at Disney's PEG ratio, it's only at around 1.4, while Netflix is at 2.2. And yes, we would like that to be closer to 1, but the fact that Disney's is just so much lower than Netflix is pretty insane. Now, are there some concerns? Of course there are. Disney's television segment and ESPN have been struggling for a while as more people continue to cut the cord. There's a lot of investor hope on their upcoming streaming service, which we don't even know all the details about yet. But I think at these prices, I still think that Disney is worth the risk, even with those negatives out there. Alright, now my third largest stock is Microsoft, ticker symbol MSFT. Probably my safest stock out of all three, to be honest, but I started adding Microsoft stock as a dividend growth stock for my dividend growth portfolio, but I've just been buying more and more, and it's been climbing my overall portfolio ever since. Now, when looking at the recent performance, in June they were relatively flat. In July they went up by around 7%, and then in August they went up by around 4%. And currently they trade for around $110 per share. Now, even though Microsoft is a dividend growth stock for me, I think that they are still a great company to invest in even without those dividends. And you know what's kind of funny is that when I started talking about Microsoft on this channel, I actually received a comment from someone saying that Microsoft was kind of boring, and then another person said that Microsoft's returns are not big enough to interest them. And I just think that those comments were, I don't want to like talk trash, but I just think those comments were kind of silly. That's my PG that's my PG way of saying that I agree with those comments. To be honest with you, I don't know how anybody can consider Microsoft boring. I mean, they're competing in enormous markets that will only continue to grow in the future, and these are very exciting markets. I mean, when you look at the cloud and server market, Microsoft is there with Azure, pretty much only behind Amazon. When you look at the gaming market, Microsoft is there with Xbox, and almost all PC gaming is done on Windows. And then even just looking at the PC market, Windows is the primary operating system for all PCs. And then Microsoft even has a presence in the mobile market with Android and iOS. They have all their apps and services available there as well. And then when you talk about the business service market, they not only have Microsoft Azure, but they completely dominate that space with Office 365. And then you look at some of these other markets like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and Microsoft has their own mixed reality platform with HoloLens, and they're even using artificial intelligence to grow businesses as a service. And a great example of that, I was reading one report that Microsoft AI was actually used by farmers in agriculture to produce higher yields, and that could potentially be huge as more resources are exhausted and populations just continue to go up. But coming back to that argument of Microsoft being boring, Microsoft is even pushing the boundaries. They're entering new markets. They're making acquisitions. You look at some of these recent acquisitions. They acquired LinkedIn, which is the most important platform for professionals and pretty much for all networking. Anybody that wants to do any kind of networking is probably using LinkedIn. And then they are also acquiring GitHub, probably the most important platform for the coding and developer market, which is a fast growing market as well. So not only is Microsoft a well-respected company that I consider a great value stock, even with their dividends and all that, but they also provide a ton of growth. When you look at their different segments year over year in their last quarter, their productivity and business segment was up 13%, their personal computing segment was up 17%, intelligent cloud was up a massive 23%, and that's the segment that has Microsoft Azure in it. And then you look at total revenue, and that was up by 17%. And again, this is a company that pays dividends. They have over 15 years of growth on those dividends and still only pay out a ratio of around 40%, which means that they are not only sustainable, but they have a long track record that says that they will continue to pay them out and increase them in the future. And then the comments about them not offering a lot of returns to investors, you look at the past 5 years, they have one of the best looking charts out there, up well over 230%. And so Microsoft is a company that I really like, competing in markets that I love to invest in. Even looking at the gaming market, that's a market that will be worth over $200 billion in the next few years. I mean, that's a massive, massive market that still has so much to tap into. A lot of people have been saying that Microsoft has the most potential out of any company to be the next Netflix of gaming, which would be potentially huge. And with Microsoft Azure, they already have the entire platform and infrastructure to deliver on that. And we know that they're pushing games as a service. As a gamer myself, I don't really like that because I like having hard copy of games in that. But as an investor, I find it extremely appealing. And we know that they're already kind of tapping into that with Games Pass, and they are also offering a subscription service where you can pay a monthly fee to get yourself an Xbox and get Xbox Live and Games Pass all in one bundle for a monthly price. And then after like 2 years, I think you get to keep the Xbox. So Microsoft is definitely making the pushes into that type of market. So overall, I just don't see any reason to not be bullish on Microsoft. I don't think they're a boring company. I think that they are an exciting company, a massive company that you can rely on, and I really like them for the very long term. Okay, but that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know how you feel about these three stocks. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You want to add anything? Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Also, let me know which one of these three stocks you like the most. I'll tally up the results and I'll have that for you guys in next month's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to support the channel. Hit the like button. It really helps me out more than you could ever know. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Have a wonderful, beautiful day and take care. Bye-bye.